Dead Space Remake will offer ray tracing and frame rate of up to 120 frames per second on Xbox Series X. Let's look into this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So are you looking forward to Dead Space Remake? Well, I do, and if you do too, well, I've got some great news for you guys, especially if you own Xbox Series X. So I've been doing some digging on the 30 frames per second games and 60 frames per second games, and I was actually curious whether Dead Space Remake will offer 60 frames per second, right? And obviously I did Google that, and Google actually led me to that Microsoft, or should I say Xbox page, where well, you've got quite a lot of information on Dead Space Remake, right? And in this particular section where they talk about like Xbox Series X version, they got these capabilities section, right? So really they talking about features for that particular version of the game, and in capabilities you see 4K, makes sense, HDR, single player, it is a single player game, and they say that this game will come with ray tracing, 60 frames per second plus. So, and obviously that, I guess, leads us to 120 frames per second. Spatial sound, which is really 3D audio, and they confirm that the game is optimized for Series S and X and Xbox Live, so that's Xbox achievements, right? So this is Microsoft webpage talking about this particular game, right? But that's only first part of the good news, I guess, because then I did some more digging and I found this page, and this is eaanswers.com or answers.ea.com, where you can ask all kinds of questions about EA games. And somebody did ask about Dead Space on Xbox Series S, X and PlayStation 5. They asked about resolution and frame rate. And a community manager of EA, he basically said that they will provide all the necessary information closer to their launch, as not everything has been provided on both retailers' store pages, but Xbox webpage, and they provide link to that website, obviously, which I showed you just a minute ago. They basically confirmed all these capabilities for 4K HDR, single player, ray tracing, 60 FPS plus, 120 frames per second, spatial sound, and that kind of stuff. So they sort of confirmed that, right? Looks like these will be the options on the series consoles. Now, obviously, we still don't have all the information. We don't know whether all these features will be on both Xbox Series S and X. We don't know whether those features will be on PlayStation 5 as well, right? I would assume so, right? I mean, I would assume that whatever Xbox Series X will get, PlayStation 5 will get as well. And but you know, there's so many different games where Xbox Series X version may come with a 120 frames per second option, but Xbox Series S don't have that option, right? So that's why I'm just saying that we don't have all the information, right? So it might be that Xbox Series S version may be locked to like 1080p 60 frames per second, without ray tracing, and 1080p 30 with ray tracing. I mean, I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying that's the case, but looks like, generally speaking, on Xbox Series X at least, because that's the more powerful of the two consoles, we will get all these options. Now, obviously, I'm not even trying to suggest that we will get 4K at 120 frames per second and ray tracing all in one mode, right? If anything, well, we're probably looking at some different modes, like ray tracing at 4K 30 or something like that, right? Etc, etc. Now, I'm not really sure what's that all about, because we've got 60 FPS plus, so that may be just unlocked frame rate, and that 120 frames per second, is that a mode, or are we talking about like well, we've seen some games showing 120 frames per second mode, but not necessarily providing 120 frames per second, right? Because, you know, sometimes it's just like unlocked frame rate. So the fact that they will have that 120 frames per second mode doesn't necessarily mean that the game will run at locked frame rate, right? And whatever, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe Xbox Series S will have unlocked frame rate as well. But either way, it looks like this particular game is going to be offering quite a lot of different modes, and that's great because I love modes. I love these options, right? Because you as a gamer will have a choice, right? It's not like, oh, 4K 30 with ray tracing because that's the way we imagine this game, right? It's more like on PC, we've got options and optimized options, right? So, you know, whenever you choose a particular mode, you know that it's going to work, like, well, sort of, right? So guys, like, I really can't wait to play this game. You know, Dead Space, I played Dead Space 1 and 2 back in Xbox 360 and PC days, right? Never played Dead Space 3. It actually went under my radar for some reason. I mean, not that I didn't know that it existed, but I must have been very busy with some other stuff, playing some other games probably when Dead Space 3 came out, so I still need to play that game. But you know what, I would really love Dead Space Remake to do good, because I would love, and actually Dead Space 2 and 3 remakes as well, and then maybe Dead Space 4. I mean, I'm not sure how Dead Space 3 ended, so I can't really say whether that makes sense story-wise. But anyway, Dead Space 1 and 2 were great, so I'm really looking forward to those. And by the way, from what I've heard, Dead Space 3 is more like an action game. And there's some action in this game, obviously, in Dead Space 1, but it's more like a horror game, really, an exploration game, solving puzzles and that kind of stuff. But anyway, listen, 4K, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second, ray tracing. These are all modes that will be available on Xbox Series X. So that's fantastic news. We don't really know at what kind of combination. It may be 4K 30 frames per second with ray tracing, 4K 60 without ray tracing, and maybe 1080p at 120 frames per second. I'm just speculating here, but with, you know, considering all these modes, I guess that would make sense. And I would expect the same on PlayStation 5. They just haven't really confirmed that, right? So guys, listen, you know, in a world where we've got more and more rumors about games that lock to 30 frames per second on consoles, it's actually refreshing to see that there's actually games that will be running at 60 or even up to 120 frames per second. So that's fantastic news. So guys, that's the video. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Thanks for support. I really appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share the video on social media, share the good news about 120 frames per second on Xbox and probably PlayStation 5 as well. And guys, I will see you all in the next one. Take care.